Today, I'm going to go through just a few things. One, a little bit of background information about, why we think this is an important product. Talk about a little bit about how it works, and then we're going to go through some examples and actually jump into the software online and create a few dashboards. So let's first just a little bit of setup information about, like I mentioned, why Publisher is important. As transportation modelers, we know that these models hold a wealth of information and insights about the transportation network, about behavioral information, how it's used both today and possibly in the future, how different projects would impact that, and how future growth would impact that. But it can be really difficult and time-consuming to curate this information so that we can get in the hands of people who are non-modelers. Oftentimes, at some point, we're going to have to pass this information off to maybe decision makers, colleagues, things like that, who may not be modelers, have no interest in jumping into the software themselves. So, that's a pretty common problem we hear from a lot of our customers. And we think that many other stakeholders will benefit from being able to view that data, being able to explore and interact with it as well. So this could be other agencies. So if you're state DOT and MPO, you may have cities, counties that you're working with, and vice versa. You may be working, if you're an agency, maybe working with your consultants, or as a consultant, you may be working for your with your sub-consultants or your prime consultant, or maybe even your end user customers. Need to be able to show this to decision makers. Also other departments, right? A lot of times we may be passing information along to other areas of the practice. So for example, we're going to talk, one of the examples we're going to go through today is bicycle data. So maybe you're an MPO, you have somebody who's tasked with, making bicycle travel more accessible in your region. You can pass that information off to them. At the end of the day, we know that, with better access to the information, we can all make hopefully better and more well-informed decisions about transportation. So there's a number of ways we can go about solving this problem today that you might be familiar with. Obviously, you can just use a modeling software. For example, Zoom has a really robust system of graphics, so you can produce all kinds of really great visuals, charts, maps, things like that. But you kind of either have to do a screenshot, pass that off into something like a PowerPoint or a PDF. Move stuff into Excel is really common. Do a bunch of kind of manipulation there. But all those graphics and stuff like that, if you don't take the time to actually put them together in a report or in a PowerPoint, it's really difficult to pass those off to other people. If they're not, people are going to jump in the software. There's also all kinds of different custom dashboards available. Things like Power BI, GIS tools, and often, especially on the Zoom side, we see a lot of custom reporting developed in things like Python and R to make these custom HTML reports. We do that a lot times as well. But there's some issues with this. All these things, oftentimes the tools aren't necessarily made specific to deal with transportation models. So they may not have dedicated data types, things like that to deal with it. That also makes it flexible, but oftentimes it can make it for a little bit steeper learning curve and ramp up time. It can take you a lot of time to prepare this data, right? So if you have to move data in between different formats and pass it off between different pieces of software, this can take up a lot of your time, especially if you're working with a project and need to kind of iterate quickly or collaborate with your team members really quickly. That could take a lot of time if you have to do it over and over again. Sometimes these tools require specific skill sets by users, right? Like if you're want a non-modeler to take a look at a Zoom model and be able to explore it, that can be kind of difficult because Zoom is a great piece of software, but it's not something that somebody who's never used it before is going to pick up in 5 minutes, be able to really dive in and explore a lot of that stuff. And we talk about a lot of those different types of dashboards and HTML reporting, things like that. A lot of custom development's required that goes into that. And that was really difficult to adapt and maintain over time. Anybody's had a lot of those reports. You have to deal with things like, Python and R package versions and all those sorts of things. It can be really difficult to move around. And as you update models, it can be difficult to keep all that stuff updated and working. There also can be licensing and sharing issues, right? So we've had this with quite a few customers with things like these online dashboards and stuff. It may be difficult for them to share that with other members of their team across organizational boundaries or out to the public. And it could be difficult to also manage, who has visibility to that. So we certainly hope that one of the pieces of software we developed, PTV Publisher, is certainly the answer to some of these questions. So this is a cloud-based service that can be used to share model data and results, help you enable communication, collaboration, and exploration of that data. Some of the reasons we think this is a really great solution, it's a very simple user interface. So really anybody, as you'll see once we dive into the software, can jump in here and use it very effectively, very quickly. We make the licensing for this very easy. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Basically, you can assemble a team, assign users different permissions, whether they're an admin on the account, whether they can view dashboards, whether they can edit dashboards. We also make it easy to share those dashboards to the public. This is designed for model data, so as we'll see, like all those kind of data types using Zoom, it's really easy to upload that. You can build these types of interactive maps that users can then zoom around, explore the data, as well as animations. So you see on the right here, this animation of, this is actually a transit timetable. So if you're using a dynamic assignment, so like a simulation-based assignment in Zoom, you can do animations. These transit timetables can be animated. You can also animate things like activity-based model trajectories as well. And this is easily shareable. Whoever you're sharing this to doesn't need anything more than a web browser to use this. We also have the ability to comment and collaborate, so you can have the ability to do comments and resolve comments similar to what you may do in other pieces of software like Adobe or Microsoft Word. You can go in there, resolve comments and things like that. Again, for maybe doing QA, QC, you can upload this data to the dashboard, give this to somebody who can go through and check data, comment if something is off, then go back and correct it. So for all these reasons, we think this is a really great platform for enabling communication. So with that, I'm going to pause for a brief second, and we're going to go to our first poll question, and we certainly appreciate it if you could give us some feedback on this question. So we're just very curious to know, what type of dashboards you're currently creating. So you're using GIS for this, or you're doing custom stuff, something like Power BI, maybe nothing, or some other kind of solution. And if you're using something else, we'd be really curious to know. You do have the questions box, so feel free to jump on there and just put in the questions box, what type of dashboard you're using. It would be really interesting for us. We'll just keep that open just for a few more minutes. Or I shouldn't say minutes, just a few more seconds here. All right. Thank you very much. And I'm going to share those results as well, because I think everybody will find that interesting. So it looks like a lot of people are using, it's kind of hard to see on my screen, sorry. A lot of people are using GIS, a little bit of custom stuff for Power BI, and quite a few people aren't really doing anything as far as dashboarding. So very interesting. So now let's talk a little bit about, before we actually jump over into Zoom and Zoom Publisher, just lay the groundwork a little bit so you can see how this will work overall. So you have your model in Zoom. I should, I guess, mention at this point too, right now, currently Publisher is focused on Zoom. Many of you may use other softwares in our suite of tools like vSim or vStro, and some more capability around that is coming very soon, hopefully. But our first stop was to get this up and running with Zoom, and the more capability will follow shortly. So you have all your model data in Zoom. Basically, as most things, you just do a file and export. You have the ability to go in and select the network objects or the type of trajectories if you're doing an animation you'd like to select. And then you can choose the type of attributes you want to upload. So, for links, you may want to do things like volumes, number of lane, view over C, things like that. So you just choose what the data you want to upload, and you can only upload that. You also have the option to only export active objects if you want to limit the size a little bit. So it's really straightforward. You can kind of just upload the data you need. That way, when you pass it off to somebody, they're not like drowning in data that they have to sort through, especially if they're not a model user. So it's really easy just to go in and do this. Once you do that, select what you want to upload. From there, there's kind of two hierarchies within the software. The first is going to be a model, and then the second is a scenario under that model. So those scenarios could be, which we'll talk about this in a little bit as well. So you could have different forecast horizons, you could have different alternatives, all those sorts of things. Once you select what scenario you'd like to upload this under, so every model will have a model and then at least one scenario. You hit upload. If you zoom in the background, packages all that data up and begins a export up to the cloud. Once you hit the export button, you're free to use vZoom as you were. And then there's basically a background operations that's uploading this. If you go in your system tray, you can actually see the status of any of these uploads. And then that data is going to appear on the dashboard you're going to see in Publisher, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So once we're there in Publisher, you have this kind of blank slate you can use to build a dashboard. You can add elements such as static maps, animated maps, things like column, line, and pie charts, network layers for different types of data. So that could be like point data, polygons, lines. You can do line bars, OD relations. So kind of those like desire lines. We'll demonstrate how you can do a scenario selection. So you can easily toggle between scenarios within a dashboard. Also do things like tables, as well as add text and images. Once you have created your dashboard, this is a super simple one. We're going to build some more complicated stuff here in a minute. You have the ability to make that dashboard then viewable for people who are within your team. So you can set it to be viewed by everyone in your team, whether it's visible for people, only admins and editors, whether people who have view permissions can see it, or whether the general public can see it with a link. So as far as like these links that go out to the general public, you don't have, for example, like an agency, or you won't have like a landing page where somebody from the public can go and view all your dashboards. When you share a dashboard publicly, it's going to generate an individual link for you that you can send out, and then people have to have that particular link to go to the dashboard, or of course you could embed that link on your website or an email or whatever. But it's super simple to control who has access to those various dashboards. All right. With that, right before we jump in and do some examples, we are going to have one more poll question. All right, so we just want to kind of ask what features would be the most attractive for you as far as publishers. So whether it's the ability to just quickly create visuals, whether it's sharing data to non-modelers, sharing data amongst other modelers, or just kind of that collaborative piece, commenting, being able to go back and forth. And we'll leave that open just for about a minute here. I think it looks like most people have had a chance to vote at this point. And I'm going to go ahead and share that one as well. So it looks like a lot of people, find this interesting for either, the visuals, or being able to share that information with people who are not modelers. Excellent. All right. With that, we're going to jump into some examples. So I'm just going to bring my web browser over here. So as far as how you access vZoom Publisher, so it's available just via our webpage. So if you go to PTV's webpage at ptvgroup.com, you can select products and vZoom Publisher, like you see here. And that's going to bring you to the webpage. I'm going to draw your attention to this for a couple of reasons. First, you do have the option to do a 30-day trial. So if you're a current Resume user, want to give this a try, you certainly have the option to do that. If you hit activate for free, it's going to take you to the sign up page. You can activate your 30-day trial, or if you have an account already, a subscription, you can log in here. A couple other interesting things you may find on this webpage that are, if I scroll down, we do have a gallery available. So if we click on the gallery here, this is going to bring up a whole bunch of examples. So this is something you can also go to the webpage and explore. If we go here and click on one of these dashboards, it'll actually take you to that dashboard that's shared via public link. So in this particular one, this is a dashboard that shows accessibility via different modes of transportation. So we have this black dot here in the middle, which is the origin. And then you can toggle between the different polygons here that show accessibility via bike, via car, and via public transportation. So there's a number of things available here within this dashboard gallery. So we certainly encourage you to go on here and take a look. You can see there's a bunch of different examples on here, which we'll visit some of these features as we get going here. The other thing, I'm gonna go back to this last page, I'll draw your attention to is kind of licensing options. So you can explore this a little bit. So we basically have kind of three basic forms of licensing for this. The first is that free 30-day trial we talked about. And basically then control the licenses based on the number of dashboards you have, the number of users you have, and then those public links. So these are the kind of the base. If you need some other arrangement, we can certainly talk about coming up with a little bit more custom arrangement for you. But the small team, which would be the most common, gives you 20 dashboards at any one time. There's no limit to the amount of models or scenarios you can have. You get up to 25 users. Those users can be within your organization or there's other stakeholders. So it can be clients, they can be other agencies. So we'll talk a little bit here in a second about how those accounts are administered. Then you can get up to 10 publicly shared dashboards at a time. So you can turn those public links on and off so as needed. And then we do have a larger team that's available, just depending on the size of the team you think you'll be working with. All right. Now, once you've logged into the software, you're going to come to the home page. You're going to be greeted with a couple things here. So as part of this and some of the other cloud applications we've released, for example, you may have seen our application flows for real-time traffic management or lines for transit planning. All those revolve around the same account system that's called My PTV. So if I click on my name up here, you can see I can be a member of multiple products and multiple accounts for those products. So for example, I have 3 different versions of publishers. So maybe you're a consultant, you work with multiple agencies. You could have different accounts for those agencies or be invited by the agency into those accounts. And you can toggle back and forth between those accounts. And also this is kind of way you access all these cloud products. So that's really good that you can just easily switch back and forth. You get a what's new feature here, so this kind of keeps you up to date. One of the things that differs a little bit from the desktop products, our desktop products typically have a fairly regular release cycle. With the cloud products, the great thing is when you get a new feature ready, we can push it out, and this is where one of the places you can find out about it. So you can see what the latest features are and keep up to date, because oftentimes, they're working, very quickly on a lot of this stuff. So you may log in and oftentimes I'll see stuff here that I didn't even know they had already implemented. From here, you also get an idea of how many dashboards are used within your account and how many public links, so you can kind of keep an eye on that. You have some things for help, knowledge base, support, access to the example gallery we talked a little bit about. And then I'll jump real quick in here and show you our features. So I'm an administrator on this account. So you can easily log in and see who all has been invited into this and what their permissions are. So you can It'll show you who the main person on the account is. You can easily edit people's permissions, delete them, invite different users, those sorts of things. It's really easy to kind of keep track of, who has access to what within your account. So we'll go back again. The other piece you can see is the data overview. So this is where you can see all the models and scenarios that you've already uploaded. And we're going to come back to this here in a minute and show some of the things that you can do with this. So within here, you'll see those kind of different hierarchies of the model. If you click on them, it's going to expand and you'll have the different scenarios. Under each scenario, then you can then see the types of data that have been uploaded. So in this case, we have links, OD pairs, and zones. If I click on zones, you can see the different data types that have been uploaded. So you get the data type and the name. This is actually a new feature. So if you've tried Publisher in the past, couple new things have just been added. If I find, let me find a good one here. Number of e-bikes, for example, is in this data. So I can now edit this, and oftentimes, again, if you're passing this information off to people who are not modelers, maybe some of these attribute names might not make a lot of sense to them, like a zoom attribute name for volume or something like that they may not understand. So this is where you can come in here and add a custom label to this. So that way it's understandable by other people. And also for certain things like, if I have anything here, for some things here, you'll be able to change the display units as well. So if you have, lengths or something like that, you can change back and forth between, miles and kilometers, for example. So where you can kind of, take a look at those, and you get these comparable data sources. And so this is basically letting you know that there's other sources of data that you can use that scenario comparison on. So that'll make sense once we start building some dashboards. All right. With that, I'm just going to jump in and go ahead and show you how easy it is to build those dashboards. So if I want to create a new dashboard here, it's going to bring up a blank dashboard. So I did upload a couple models ahead of time and some data. The first is bike share data from the Capital Bike Share in the Washington, D.C. area. They have some publicly available data in terms of both like where the stations are, but also some usage, some like OD data for those bike shares. And I pulled a particular day that was a Sunday in July, I think, just because I thought it would be kind of peak tourist season for DC area. So we're going to take a look at some of that data that I've already uploaded. All right, so the first thing we do, once we have created a new dashboard, we can rename it. So we can just call this bike share data and save it. And then we can begin adding these widgets, which are the individual components that you can add to this dashboard. So the first thing we're going to add is a static map. So if I click on that, it's going to pop open. You get this grid, and you can just kind of draw the size of the map you want on the dashboard. From here, we can add layers. This will pop open, and you'll see a number of different types of layers you can do. So you can do 3D bars, you can do regular lines, line bars, stacked. For polygons, you can either do 2D polygons for like zones, or you can do prisms, so they are 3D, those kind of 3D extrusions, point layers, and OD pairs. In this case, I have some, we're going to treat those bike share stations as a point layer. So I'll click that, and they'll show up as points, and then I can choose a data source, which is going to be these bike share zones. And if I click on that, it will go ahead and pull up the map. Straight away, I'm going to edit a couple things just to make it easier to see. If I go here in the edit widget up in the settings, this is where I can do the map settings. So I'm going to change this to a dark view. You see I have a number of different maps available. So you can do this gray elevation map. I'm going to do dark though, because it's just a little bit easier to see. And we can see that this map is populated with all those bike share stations that were in our data. The other thing that's in the setting that's interesting is this remember map view. Because this data is, the users can explore this once they get access to this map. You may want to set their default view, and you can do that with this remember map view. So I'll click this here because this is kind of centered around DC. And then we can begin kind of setting this model data up. So first thing we're going to go through is do the color. And we're going to do the color based on one of the attributes. So some of the data I've uploaded here from Resume, some are information about the bike share data, so the number of dots, how many electric bikes are there, that sort of thing. But because I also pulled in that OD data as well, I have trips that are where that bike share station was a destination, trips where that bike share station was the origin, and then this internal is going to be, trips that start and end at the same location. So I'm just, for the sake of this, going to choose origin. So we're going to see where people started their trip. And you already see the colors change. It'll automatically lump them into buckets depending on your data. Here we can go down and get an idea of what the distribution of those. So we see that we have a lot of bike share stations that don't get used very much. And then we have a smaller number of stations that get utilized pretty heavily. If you click on this color, you can have your choice of the number of buckets that those go into. So I'm going to do 9 just so there's more buckets. And then I can go in and change the color scheme. Let's maybe do this one here. And you'll see them change. We can also then choose an attribute to vary the radius of those points on. So we're going to do it based on the same. So the color and size kind of match up. And I will change it there. And then I have to choose the demand. And then we can play with, I want the circles to be a little bigger. So I'll make the max value 200 and then the smallest maybe like 50. And then you'll see that information populates very quickly. We can also change, make these more transparent so the map looks a little cooler. You also, can do some stuff around how those buckets are and change the distributions. All right, so as easy as that, we've been able to, create a map that shows this. This is I'm gonna extend this down a little bit so it's larger. We've collapsed that. So you also see this is interactive. So whether you're the user or the creator, like I am right now, you have the ability to zoom in on this stuff. You can also hover over it. Now, in this case, we're seeing the only the attribute that we use to vary the size and the color, but we can actually change that. That's a setting. So if I click back and edit this map element, so we are dealing with the data. If we hit detail view, this is where we can add objects that will be like a pop-up menu when you click on an item. So let's do origin, traffic, destination, and internal. And then we have to choose the demand segment for these. Like that. And now if we go back to the map and scroll on again, and if I click, now we get access to all those data types or all those attributes. So now if you pass this off to someone, they're going to be able to click through and see all those individual data that you've allowed for them. This is another one where if you used Publisher in the past, it didn't always do this. This is a newer feature. Before all those attributes showed up, but this just makes it quite a bit cleaner to look at. But maybe just for the sake of what we're doing here, I'm going to change this a little bit. Instead, we're going to look at a couple of these other attributes. So let me clear that out. Oh, clear the wrong thing. Just fix that real quick. Let's choose that color. And then to go to the detail view, I am going to get rid of these real quick. And then I'm going to save the dashboard. And here I'm going to go back and clean up my data a little bit. So this is where if I go into the model data and click on zones, here maybe I will change a couple of these These already changed a number of bikes, number of e-bikes, and so I'll change this to trips starting here. Then trips ending here. And trips starting and ending here. And confirm. Now when I go back to dashboards and look at the one I just created, and I go back and edit it, details, and then now I have these kind of more friendly descriptions. And if I zoom in and click on one, here's where you can really simplify that for people who aren't, like I said, modelers. They might understand what the demand segments or like, what the destination traffic PRT is. So we can just simply say trip starting here, trips ending here. You can also have this stuff broken out by, like you see here, demand segments, but also things like time intervals. We can also add other data to this. So I did, based on this data, pulled in an OSM network with all the kind of bicycle data and did run an assignment here. So I can add some of that data. So if I wanted to add a line layer from the same model, I can select the links. And I think when I upload this, I filtered it for just links with traffic. So you don't get, this was a pretty big OSM network. It had like 1.5 million links. So we don't need to see all those. So you get an idea where all that traffic according to the assignment is. Now, as you can see, the links kind of cover up our zone. So easy enough to change the layer order here and just swap those around. And then go back to the links. And we can, maybe we'll leave the color alone. We'll just make them a little transparent, make them a bit smaller, and choose the width based on the volume. And some of the stuff will take a second to redraw. And now when you zoom in, you can go and you actually see what the volumes are according to that assignment that I ran. So just like that, you're easily able to, combine all this point data and line data into a map. I can find a nice setting I like, remember the map view. And you've created this interactive map now that you can share out with your colleagues or to the public. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this, and we're gonna go through a similar version of this, but we're actually gonna vary it a little bit and show you how that scenario selection works. As I mentioned earlier, you can do the scenario selection based on, like base of forecast years or different scenarios, but I'm gonna use it to display attributes differently. So if I go back and I'm gonna create a new dashboard, and we'll drop another static map here. We'll do the same housekeeping here. I'm gonna change that to dark, and add a layer, point layer, and this time, notice I have a couple other under that bike model. I have a couple different scenarios, destinations, origins, and a return to origin. So I'm going to kind of utilize that here, and I'll show you how. So I'm going to click that, one of these, and it's going to give me the same kind of dots here. This time what I did is created another attribute in vZoom that's called trips, and basically uploaded the trips, different scenarios, whether they're the origin, the destination, or there's internal trips that were started and returned to the same bike share station. So if I click that, it'll then vary the color again like we did before. And we'll change the palette again, something a little more interesting. And we'll change the size again to 50 and 200. Zoom back in. So now this is showing us that trips, where in this case I use the destination. So now we're going to add actually a different widget to this map that's going to let us swap things around, and that's going to be the scenario selection. So I click that widget, and it's going to give me options. You have a couple different ways you can do this. You can do a drop-down box. You can do a slide or buttons. I'm going to do buttons. And we're going to select the model we want to use. And then it gives me the different scenarios that I can add under that model. So I'm going to do destination, origin, return to origin. And just kind of click that there. And go back to our map. And so now when I click the different scenarios, it's going to load the different information as far as destinations of those trips, origins of those trips, or those kind of internal trips. And if I click on that, you can scroll through. There's quite a few of these internal trips right here around the National Mall, which kind of makes sense. And you can see quite a few usage origin and then destination. So this is another way just to really easily make it so you can toggle through data rather than click on each one. You want to get an idea of what these big trends are. You can simply click through here and get an idea where those destinations lie. You can go back and do a little bit of change as far as how those color buckets are and things like that if you wanted to kind of tune this up based on that data. We're actually add another widget too, just to give you an idea. We'll do a table widget. So for a table widget, we can again choose our model. And now we can add different, not links, I want zones. We can put the name of the station here in the table, and we're going to do trips starting here, or ending here, starting here, and starting and ending here. And then I can edit this and draw this out. Maybe I want to make a little more room for this here. Make this table a little bigger. And now you have all this information in table form as well, and you have the option to do, kind of table-y things like sorting, scrolling through the data, things like that. So can rename this and call this scenarios. And that easily enables you to, again, share this information in both the map form and tabular form, just to show you how the sharing works as well. So if I click on the sharing dashboard here, this allows you to set it either visible for team viewers. So administrators and editors can see the entire account, so they can see all the dashboards. If you're a viewer only, you only see ones that this is clicked on for. That way, if you're maybe working with clients or something like that, you can still have some of your dashboards that are not visible to viewers, and then they can go in there and they don't see all your scratch or stuff from other projects. You can just easily make that visible for them. If we want to make this a public link, we can just hit this. It's going to generate a link, and then I can copy that link, and now I can send that out to anyone and make that easily visible. All right. I do want to touch just real quick on two other things. Say this is saved, so I'm going to create another dashboard real quick and show you a little bit as far as two other features, which would be the charting as well as the other kind of newer feature that we've added, which is on-the-fly calculations. So like I showed you there, you have the ability to swap between those different scenarios and different attributes in those scenarios. We also have the ability to calculate, like, for example, the difference between two scenarios on the fly. So we'll drop another map, and I'll add some link information here. So let's do a line bar layer, and I have a model to go, model of Atlanta, with just a handful of links in here. So I'm going to make that a little bigger, and it's going to take a minute to load. Same thing here. I'm going to change this to a dark map. And we could do the line width based on, let's just say, the volume of vehicles. This has an assignment run based on some big data. It's not going to be totally proportional. But then, you'll get an idea there. We could do color based on, let's say, the free flow speed. Actually, let me show you real quick that on the fly calculation, not only for the scenarios, but just in here, for example, if you want to do the color based on a calculated value. I think on this one, I actually have the volume capacity ratio already calculated, but you could calculate that here. You hit the calculation settings, and we could just call this V over C. And I could do the volume of vehicles divided by the capacity and hit calculate. And it will show you, it'll calculate that on the fly. So you can do this for the difference between scenarios. You see the distribution, things like that. This is not a calibrated model or anything, so I wouldn't take any of these V over C's for gospel. This was just for some example data. That's basically, in a nutshell, how you can easily calculate values on the fly, even if it wasn't something that was calculated as a part of the upload. As far as charting as well, it's easy enough to go in here and add, for example, a bar chart. I can make this bigger, choose a data source. We'll choose the same model. And here, basically, you have all your attributes you uploaded. So I could do, just have a facility type here. All right, so link type name. And then we could do the volume of vehicles and the sum. Let me just make this a little smaller. And then edit this and change this to horizontal and make it a little bigger. And now, just that simple, we can get an idea across the total model area what the total volume per facility type is. So you can easily just kind of create these types of charts. You can add a different dimension to this as well if you wanted to do something, if you wanted to do it by, I don't know, how much that volume by capacity ratio or something, you could do that as well. So you can easily just format this data and create these charts on the fly. And you have some other options, of course, here as far as changing your labeling, showing a legend or not, all those sorts of things. So all this kind of charting is very easy to do as well. While we're here as well, a couple things I didn't touch on. So let's say I make this smaller and I'll make this map a little bit bigger again. And let's say you have a few different things on here. Sometimes these widgets can get a little bit on the small side. You do have the ability to pop any of these widgets out. This is a new feature as well. So I can just toggle this. If I want to see this larger, toggle that and it'll expand out those views. So that's number one. The second one I wanted to bring up was the commenting. So if I make this larger and zoom in, I can just select various points here. And let's say I find this link and for whatever reason, I don't think these volume V over C is right, or this volume's right, or the geometry is not right. I can just drop a comment here. That's going to bring a comment. You'll see it has my login information. We have a number of pre-built categories here, like maybe it's something needs to be removed, it's missing, the value's wrong, geometry's wrong. Or you can leave this blank and just have generic comments. This is where I can say, like, this volume seems low, and make a comment. And then if you scroll on the map, those comments will show up like this. And if I zoom off somewhere, if somebody's looking at the various comments, they can focus on the map. It'll bring it in and zoom in. You can reply to the comments. You can also resolve the comments. There's quite a bit of flexibility here as far as commenting. Easy to kind of work with your colleagues back and forth. All right, so I think that gives us a pretty good overview of some of the capabilities.